Hi there viewers, and welcome to this week's Planet Earth Watch with the Sari cards. Now these cards were actually drawn on the 30th of April. Even though I'm uploading them on the 1st, I didn't have enough time to do the reading yesterday, and I also had to do some question asking to the universe about what this archetype card, the Mother, related to. I was pretty lost with that one when it came out. So I got some answers over the night in the way of dreams, which I'll go into towards the end of this reading. So this reading is going to go from the 30th of April through to about the 8th of May. Now just to recap on what we had last week, we had the stars, the yes, the moon, the tower and the sage. And I mentioned that the stars and the moon were very tied in together, and possibly the sage might have been as well, to indicate patterns or movement that were coming from the stars or the planets. And unbeknown to me at the time I did the reading, it was the time phase of the lurid meteorite shower, and that was well documented and well known about, as was suggested in the reading. And there had been a massive, big, explosive, loud, booming meteorite that went across parts of California and Nevada just as I was making that reading. And they say it happens every year, but they also admit that no one had heard such a loud boom like that. So it was a fairly major meteorite that did travel across. There were a few other anomalies, but to be honest, I have to say that this week it would appear, or at the beginning of May, there seemed to be more strange planet and star and moon alignments. So I've been wondering for a little while if the cards are reading slightly more than a week, if they're reading for up to 10 days, because in the week prior to last week's reading, I mentioned a comment about the Never card which came out, which had a bird on it, and I said I felt that there might be some bird-related issues. There weren't in the period of the reading, but 3 days later there were 600 dead pelicans, I believe, that were found on one of the coasts around, which is a really large bird death. So the cards were almost just out by a few days, and consequently I'm just keeping an eye on that pattern to see if they're extending themselves beyond the week. Sometimes I can't get the reading fully done within that week's period, so I'm thinking are the messages taking themselves a little bit further out. The other card that was in the reading was the Tower, and we had a couple of quakes that week last week that were close to 7. One was in the Pacific in Tonga, which was 6.7, and there was a 5.9 near Japan. And there has been a strange swarm of odd earthquakes near the San Andreas fault line. The last card that I mentioned a little bit about was the prison card, which had the feeling of being trapped. There was a large airliner, a 737, which was an Indian airliner I believe, and it crashed with many dead and trapped people. So maybe that last week's reading wasn't too bad. So these cards from this week, we start off pretty obviously. We've got the Sun as our first one. And we've had a card out before which has a sun in it, and the card is known as the Now card. Well, I still feel the Sun is going to be very similar. It's going to have messages that arrive from probably magnetic energies that the Sun is pulsing out to us. So it could be large coronal hole activities or a really strong belt of magnetic energy that gets sent our way. Interestingly enough, on this card, this is a maypole, and of course this today that I'm actually doing the reading is the 1st of May. So that was rather significant. It also shows us harvest, and I wondered, so is this in the southern hemisphere, this main event that could be taking place due to perhaps anomalies from the Sun or magnetic interference from the Sun? Two things to watch for: just the fact that it is indicating May with the maypole, and it could be the southern hemisphere. The card next to it says yes, there is something coming. The next one we have also had, interestingly enough, the libido card that came out at the same time as the Sun card came out. And I said that the libido is very much tied into spiritual energy. It's a surge, a really strong surge of energy, like powerful, just sudden. And the Sun and the libido tie in together, and they tied in the last reading together. So it's like a powerful force of sudden energy that we're assaulted with, if you like, somewhere on the earth. So I think we could be in for potentially large earthquakes, or there could be some really bad storms that arise. We sometimes see big cyclones or hurricanes big storm surges that come from these energised events that hit our atmosphere as well. Now the Mother card to me was probably the most interesting. I did struggle with it. I thought, is it just suggesting Mother Earth, Gaia, which seemed a little bit too broad to me. Then if it was just Mother Earth, how did we look at it? Did we say it looks a relatively benign, happy card? So anyhow, when I went to sleep last night, I asked for some answers to be delivered in the way of dreams. And as it comes to mind, I did have a dream about a mother, and she was actually in a particular style of clothing, and it would be very much like a burqa or a sari, so that it covered her head. I couldn't see her face, but it was more colourful than the traditional burqas, which we see over here as being black, solid colour. It was more patterned and florally, much more like a sari. But the lady who was wearing it, she had her arms out horizontally, both of them, just directly out in front of her, and she stood like that for some time with this drapery of clothes over her and protecting some children she had underneath her. I could tell that there were children under it. And then my dream suddenly turned into, I was out with my child, or my son, and I had another boy with him, and they got lost. And I had this dreadful feeling of panic, of loss. I'd lost my child, and I was hunting everywhere for him. And so I had the connection of the mother and the child and this woman. So I came to decide that the whole card may mean mothers and children in danger or threat of some sort. And oddly enough, I believe if I've read the news right, I only saw this very briefly, there was an Indian, I think it was a train crash early this morning or today, where many mothers and children have been injured or loss of lives and missing. So interesting reading this week. We have definitely had the Sun and the Libido cards come together, and I think it was a week where there was a really big quake just recently. It was that big one, was about an 8 with the no tsunami. In the end it was only a very minor tsunami that actually happened. So we'll just watch these cards for this week. Anyone with any other ideas, feel free to make some comments, get in touch. I hope you enjoy the readings. I'm enjoying doing them. I am going to just watch and see if this plays out a little bit further than the 7-day time span I've allotted it. We'll just keep an eye on that. So thanks everyone. Have a lovely week. Take care. Have fun. Be safe, be well, and be happy.